Let's talk about the LG V20, shall we? This is my review. Hello guys, how are you? David Franco here from davidfranco.com. The LG V20, let me just get this out of the way, is the best Android phone I've ever used. Now, is that saying a lot? I think it comes down to your opinion. Some quick backstory. I've used the LG G4, the LG G5, the LG V10, the LG V20, and the Samsung Galaxy Note 5. And I've liked all those phones. But this phone, yeah, it's my favorite, and for many reasons. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so the LG V20 is the first Android phone to run Android 7.0 Nougat. Nougat, is that how you say that? I always think of chicken nuggets. Seriously though, this thing is packed with a ton of features, including a 5.7-inch beautiful display running a resolution of 2560 by 1440 with a pixel density of 515 pixels per inch, and the phone weighs just 6.14 ounces. It has a 16 megapixel rear camera, which is just beautiful, more on that in a bit, an 8 megapixel wide camera, also in the rear, 5 megapixel front camera, which is also wide angle. Oh, and of course it's worth noting that the rear camera does indeed shoot in 4K video. Alright, so diving a little deeper into the specs of the LG V20, we have a 2.15 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 820 CPU with 4 GB of RAM, a 64 GB storage capacity on the LG V20. However, you can expand up to 2 TB using the included microSD slots. Now, is there a microSD card on the market that actually supports 2 TB? I don't think so, at least as of today. But that doesn't mean there will never be a 2 TB card. So if you're all about storing a ton of media on your phone, then perhaps the LG V20, well, is for you. Oh, and of course, I cannot forget to mention that the V20 does feature a fingerprint sensor, as well as a user-replaceable 3200 milliamp hour battery. The battery life is just great on this phone, and well, the fact that you can swap it with other batteries, that's a big deal to some users. Okay, so with all the specs out of the way, let's jump into my favorite features about the LG V20. But before I get into that, how's that for a teaser? Let me say this. Our phones nowadays are pretty much supercomputers in our pockets. They pretty much are. I mean, this phone can do so much more than we could do on a PC, what, 20 years ago? And that's just incredible to think about. So with that said, let me make this clear. It's impossible to go over every single feature about the LG V20. It just does so much. So for this video, and for my own personal spin on this tech review, I'm just going to talk about my favorite features about the LG V20. And then finally, at the end of this video, simply comment right below in the comment section with anything that you may be curious about this phone, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. So now, let's move forward. My favorite features about the V20. Well, first of all, let me just say this. It's exactly like the V10, which is right here. Here's the V20. But it's better. I mean, it's faster. The display, I think, is just as good, if not better. I mean, the display, guys, I just had to make this clear. The display is downright beautiful. Now, I fully understand this is not an OLED display, but LG is doing something with their display technology that makes it seem like OLED, because the blacks are so super rich, colors just pop off the screen, details are incredibly crisp, and I think it's safe to say that this is the best display I've ever seen on any phone ever. So yeah, I mean, there you go. LG, whatever you're doing with your phone technology in terms of displays, keep it up, because this is downright incredible. I can't wait to see what you do in the future. And speaking of displays, I gotta say, the secondary display up here, it's actually quite useful. I mean, I found myself using it more often than I expected to. I can quickly launch apps, I can access my essential controls instantly, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, flashlight, all that good stuff. And I can even display my name at the top, which is kind of cool. Now, this may seem gimmicky in some people's eyes, but for me, I don't know, it changed the way I use Android, which I think is a big deal. And speaking of Android, that just happens to be one of my favorite features about the V20. And I know that's an incredibly broad favorite feature, but it's something I have to mention because as a primary iPhone user, I think it's important to talk about Android and what I appreciate about it. First of all, the customization. You can do so much more in Android than you could ever do in iOS. And that's definitely something I like about Android over iOS. Now, does that make iOS bad? No, that's just Apple's approach on what should be a mobile OS. But Android has a completely different vision, so I think that's why it's unfair of us to compare Android to iOS. They do things similarly in some fashion, but at the end of the day, they're two completely different products. And that's why I enjoy Android. It's different. It's a breath of fresh air. The amount of customization is just incredibly well done. All right, so from the customization to the widgets, which I actually found quite useful and fun to use, right down to the secondary display, because let's face it, you can't do this on an iPhone. Overall, this has been a joy to use. Feels weird saying a joy. I don't think I've ever said that before, but I just feel so satisfied when using this phone. I really do. But speaking in terms of the apps, I gotta say Android has most of the apps I need. I mean, not all the apps I need, but most of them. And one of those apps is Apple Music. And with that said, thanks to the secondary display, I can actually control my Apple Music playback using that display, which I thought was really neat. But okay. I could talk about Android all day. Just know that I'm enjoying it. And I will continue to enjoy it over the next few months because I'm sure there's plenty more that I still have to experience. It's just so big. So moving on to the cameras. They simply do not disappoint, at least the rear-facing cameras. Let me get this out of the way. The front-facing camera, and this is not exclusive to just the LG V20. There's something about front-facing cameras on Android phones that consistently let me down. For some reason, you get like a washed out, muddy, grainy look. I'm not sure why. I mean, especially when front-facing cameras on the iPhone look so much better. I'm not sure what's going on. I mean, maybe it's some kind of software processing feature, but I made sure like the glamour effect was off and any other filters. Now with that out of the way, the rear-facing cameras, these do not disappoint. They are just downright incredible. Whether Android does some kind of over-processing thing or maybe the optics in here are different than what I'm used to on other phones, the pictures, the results, especially after I'm done editing them in Snapseed, which just happens to be owned by Google, the photos look amazing. I mean, these are photos that I think make a purchase like the LG V20. Photos are super sharp in detail. They may be a little over-processed if you're into that look, which I am, so maybe that look's not for everyone, but I mean, I just love that sharpness and that high contrast thing that they've got going on. But hey, you know what? I could talk about photos all day, so why not just show you a few? So, what do you think? Are the cameras not impressive? But not only that, you have a ton of manual controls built into Android by default, and this is something I definitely enjoyed using. You can adjust your white balance, manual focus, exposure, ISO, even your shutter speed, and of course, speaking in terms of video, you can record in 4K at 30 frames per second. Alright, now for a video example using the LG V20. I am shooting in 4K 30 frames per second right now. This will obviously be down-resed to 1080p because I'm shooting my primary footage in 1080p on my Canon T4i. But this should still give you a decent idea of how the LG V20's cameras handle color, saturation, exposure, all that stuff. And yes, I did indeed say cameras because you can switch to wide angle. There you go, look at that. That is insane. So this is pretty much like a GoPro built into your phone, which is pretty incredible. Back to the regular lens. And wide angle. As you can see, there is a massive, massive difference. Overall, I'm quite pleased. So finally, getting towards the end of my review, there is one more thing I want to say. Multitasking on the LG V20 is actually pretty decent. It's usable. I mean, it's obviously not as convenient and optimized as it is on a tablet, in my opinion. But for a phone that has a 5.7-inch display, multitasking, it's definitely possible. You simply open an app, you tap the multi-window icon, and boom, you're multitasking just like that. Now, of course, this doesn't work for every single app out there, but for the apps that do work with multitasking, I gotta say, they work well enough. An excellent example is running Chrome and Facebook side by side. That definitely impressed me. So finally, wrapping up my review, and again, please keep in mind, this is just like a little smidgen of everything the LG V20 has to offer. If you guys have any questions, please comment right below because I want to keep this conversation going. Okay, so getting back on track, how exactly do you buy the LG V20? Well, unfortunately, it's not available yet, but according to my sources, pre-orders are going live on October 17th. Now, sadly, there is no official price yet, at least as of this recording. I have to say it's gonna cost between $600 to $700. So in my opinion, is the LG V20 worth it? I just gotta say, hell yeah. Seriously, it's really, really good. Oh, and by the way, a bonus feature, it doesn't explode. Just kidding, I'm kidding. We can get past those jokes now, right? Yeah, they're behind us. I feel sorry for Samsung, I really, really do. But anyway, yes, in my opinion, the V20 is worth it if you're comfortable with Android. I mean, if you're looking to switch to Android from another platform, I can say with confidence, the V20 is the phone to use. You get the full Android experience. It's not pure Android because this is not a Google made phone, but you do get Android and all the features and all the customization and all the widgets and all that stuff. But you also get the secondary display, which I actually found, again, to be quite useful. So finally, a huge thank you to LG. It's simply a kick-ass phone. You probably will not be disappointed. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.